I opened that envelope thinking it held memories. Instead, it held betrayal written in my husband's own hand. The son I rocked to sleep, the daughter-in-law I welcomed as family. They were selling our life piece by piece. This isn't revenge. It's keeping a promise to the man who never stopped loving us. I sat alone at the corner table by the window, the one Vernon always claimed as his. The lantern was quiet this afternoon. Too quiet. Outside, the Atlantic rolled in slow gray waves against the rocks of Willow Bay. 1 month to the day since we laid him in the ground. 1 month since the minister said, "Ashes to ashes," and I stood there holding a single white rose, wondering how something so small could feel heavier than my whole life. The mail had come early. A plain brown envelope, no return address, just my name in Vernon's careful block letters on the front. No stamp. Hand-delivered, probably by Theo Grant himself. He still lived 3 streets over, still walked with that slight limp from the old fishing accident. I hadn't opened it right away. I couldn't. My hands were cold, even though the wood stove was crackling behind the counter. When I finally tore the flap, a thin leather notebook slid out first. Worn at the corners, the kind Vernon used to carry in his coat pocket when he went down to the docks to sketch boats or jot down story ideas for the children's books he never quite finished publishing. Tucked inside the front cover was a single sheet of paper, folded once. His handwriting, still sharp, still steady, even near the end. "Ruth, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you face to face. I tried, God knows I tried, but every time I opened my mouth, the words tasted like betrayal. Not mine. Theirs. Keep reading. The truth is in these pages, and if they come for the lantern before you finish, remember, this place was never just a building. It was ours. Don't let them take it without a fight. I love you more than the sea loves the shore. Always did. Always will. Vernon." My breath caught somewhere between my ribs. I pressed the letter to my chest like it could keep my heart from cracking open again. Then I opened the notebook. Page after page. Dates, names, numbers. 2 years of quiet, meticulous entries. Vernon had been watching Ellis come and go with that nervous half-smile he'd worn since he was 12. Watching Corinne arrive in her expensive coat, heels clicking on the old pine floor like she was measuring the place for new carpet. March 14th, Ellis asked about the deed again, said it was just curiosity. Corinne stood behind him, smiling the way she does when she wants something. I told them the lantern isn't for sale. Not now, not ever. April 9th, found a draft contract slipped under the register. My signature forged, close, but the capital R loops the wrong way. They think I'm too old to notice. June 22nd, overheard Corinne on the phone outside the back door. "Once the old man's gone, Ruth won't fight. She's grieving. We'll handle the paperwork." My fingers tightened on the edges of the page until the leather creaked. October 3rd, they met with a man from Coastal Horizons Resort Group. M. Reynolds. Offered 3 times market value for the building and the shoreline lot. Ellis looked ashamed. Corinne looked hungry. November 17th. Ellis came alone, said he was sorry, said they were in trouble. Bad investments, debts piling up. Asked if I'd consider a temporary transfer to help them out. I said no. He left without looking back. December 8th. Corinne tried again. Brought coffee, smiled like we were friends. Said Ruth was forgetful these days. Suggested power of attorney. Just in case. I told her to leave. She did. But her eyes stayed cold. And then the last entry. 3 weeks before the heart attack that took him. January 12th. I can't protect her forever. If anything happens to me, Theo will bring this to Ruth. She'll know what to do. The lantern isn't bricks and books. It's every story we ever told each other. Every quiet morning we drank coffee and watched the fog lift. Every child who came in and left with a free book and a smile. If they take it, they take all of that. I won't let them. The words blurred. Salt on the page. My own tears. I closed the notebook slowly, as if shutting it could shut out the truth. But it couldn't. I thought the worst pain was standing at his graveside, watching the dirt fall. I was wrong. The worst pain is realizing the people you raised, the boy you rocked through nightmares, the girl you welcomed like a daughter, are the ones digging the hole to bury everything he loved. My hands shook so badly, I had to set the notebook down. The lantern felt smaller suddenly. The shelves of children's books Vernon had dusted himself every Sunday. The mismatched chairs we'd collected over 40 years. The little brass bell above the door that still rang the same cheerful note it had the day we opened. All of it. They wanted all of it. I stood up, legs unsteady, walked to the window and pressed my forehead against the cold glass. The sea kept moving, indifferent. I watched it for a long time. Somewhere behind me, the wood stove popped. A log settled. I whispered into the empty room, voice cracking like dry paper. "Vernon, how long did you carry this alone?" No answer. Just the wind against the panes, and the slow, steady crash of waves that had been here long before us and would be here long after. I turned back to the table, picked up the notebook again, opened it to the first page, and began to read. Really read. Because whatever came next, I wasn't going to let them erase him. Not while I was still breathing. The next morning came too soon. Gray light slipped through the front windows of the lantern, painting long shadows across the worn floorboards. I hadn't slept, not really. I'd sat in the big armchair behind the counter until the stove died down to embers, Vernon's notebook open on my lap like an accusation I couldn't put away. I kept turning the pages back to the same entry. The one from last October. Ellis came alone, said he was sorry, said they were in trouble, bad investments, debts piling up. I could still see my boy's face in my mind the way it looked when he was little. Round cheeks, wide eyes, always asking why the ocean never stopped moving. Now those same eyes had learned to look away. I closed the notebook, set it carefully on the shelf where Vernon used to keep his favorite first editions. Then I stood up, knees stiff, and walked to the back room. Clara was already there. She'd come in early like she always did on Tuesdays, unlocking the side door, starting the coffee, wiping down the tables even though no one had sat at them yet. 22 years. She'd started when her youngest was still in diapers, and Vernon had hired her because she read to the children's story hour like the words mattered more than the paycheck. She looked up when I stepped through the doorway. One glance at my face and her hands stilled on the rag. "Ruth?" Her voice was soft, careful. "You okay?" I shook my head once. Not okay. Not even close. I held out the notebook. She took it like it might burn her. Opened it slowly. Scanned the first page. Then the next. Her mouth tightened. By the time she reached the forged signature entry, her eyes were wet. "Oh, honey," she whispered. She didn't say anything else for a long minute. Just stood there, holding Vernon's words like they were fragile bones. When she finally looked up, her voice was steady. "What do you need me to do?" I swallowed. The words felt heavy coming out. "I need you to help me look through everything. The files, the emails on the old computer in the office, the bank statements Vernon kept in the bottom drawer. Everything. And Clara, no one can know. Not Ellis. Not Corinne. Not yet." She nodded once. No questions. No hesitation. She just set the notebook down gently and said, "Sit. I'll make coffee first. Strong. We're going to need it." We worked in silence for hours. Clara at the desk, clicking through folders on the ancient desktop Vernon refused to replace because it still works, doesn't it? Me beside her, sorting paper trails, receipts, old leases, handwritten notes Vernon had tucked into envelopes labeled simply family. It was Clara who found the emails first, buried in a subfolder labeled Resort Inquiry, Archive. Corinne's name in the sender line, multiple messages, all to the same address at Coastal Horizons Resort Group. Clara clicked one open. The screen glowed pale blue in the dim room. Subject: Follow-up on Willow Bay property. Ruth: Just checking in. The survey team will be out next week. Mother-in-law is getting forgetful these days. Memory slips more often than not. We'll handle the paperwork on her behalf. She trusts us completely, looking forward to moving things forward quickly. Best, Corinne Whitaker. I read it twice, then a third time. Each word landed like a small, cold stone in my chest. Forgetful. Memory slips. We'll handle everything. Clara's hand found mine under the desk, squeezed once. Hard. I didn't cry then. Not yet. I just sat there staring at the screen until the letters blurred. Later, after Clara had gone to open the front for the first customers, I went alone into the storage room at the very back, the one full of boxes of unsold children's books, old display stands, and the faint smell of salt and aged paper. I pulled Vernon's old rocking chair out from the corner, the one he used to sit in when he read aloud to the after-school kids. I sat down, opened the notebook again. This time I didn't skim. I read every word, every date, every quiet observation he'd never spoken aloud. He'd known. For 2 years. He'd watched our son drift further and further away, pulled by debts and promises and a wife who smiled while she measured the worth of everything in dollars. And he'd never told me, not once, because he didn't want to break my heart before he had to. That was the moment it hit me. Really hit me. I pressed the open notebook to my chest, curled forward in the chair, and the tears came. Slow at first, then harder, quiet sobs that shook my shoulders. I rocked back and forth like I was holding him again, his warm weight against me, the way he used to rest his head on my shoulder after a long day. "Vernon," I whispered into the pages, "why didn't you let me carry some of it?" The storage room didn't answer, just dust motes floating in the thin stripe of light from the high window. I don't know how long I stayed there. Long enough for the sobs to slow. Long enough for my breathing to steady. When I finally stood up, my legs were numb. I wiped my face with the sleeve of my cardigan, took a long, shaky breath. Then I walked back to the office, picked up the phone, dialed the number Clara had written on a sticky note earlier. Rebecca Klein, young lawyer, new in town, but Clara said she was sharp and kind. It rang twice. "Rebecca Klein speaking." My voice came out hoarse, smaller than I wanted. "This is Ruth Whitaker from the Lantern Bookshop." A brief pause, then her tone softened. "Mrs. Whitaker, Clara mentioned you might call. How can I help?" I closed my eyes, let the words come out plain. No sugar, no excuses. "I don't want revenge," I said. "I just want to protect what Vernon loved more than his own life." Silence on the other end. Not empty silence, the kind that listens. Then Rebecca answered quietly, "Come see me tomorrow morning. Bring everything you have. We'll start there." I hung up, set the phone down. Outside, the first customers were laughing softly over coffee. A child asked for "the one with the dragon on the cover." Clara's voice answered warm and sure. I stood in the doorway of the office for a long moment, watching them, listening to the bell above the door chime when someone new came in. The lantern was still breathing, still alive, and so was I. For now, that was enough. The rain started just after dusk. A soft, steady drizzle that turned the windows of the lantern into streaked mirrors. Inside, the lamps were low, only the ones over the reading nooks and the counter still glowing warm against the chill. I had closed early. Not because of the weather, because I needed the quiet to think. The bell above the door chimed at 7:15. I knew who it was before I looked up. Ellis pushed the door open first, shaking rain from his coat. Corinne followed, balancing a paper bag from the deli down the street. The smell of warm bread and roast beef drifted in with them. They both smiled, the careful, practiced kind people wear when they've rehearsed what to say. "Mom," Ellis said, voice gentle. Too gentle. "We thought you might not feel like cooking tonight." Corinne set the bag on the nearest table. Her coat was dry. She must have held an umbrella the whole way. "We brought your favorite, turkey and cranberry on rye. Extra pickles, just how you like." I stayed behind the counter, wiping a spot that didn't need wiping. "Thank you," I said. My voice came out even. I was proud of that. They pulled out chairs. The scrape of wood on wood sounded louder than it should have. Ellis sat first. Corinne hesitated, then took the seat facing me. She smoothed her skirt, crossed her legs at the ankles, always so composed. We ate in near silence at first, the rain tapping the glass, the occasional crackle from the stove. I watched them. Really watched. Ellis kept glancing at Corinne, like he was waiting for a signal. She took small bites, chewing slowly, smiling every time our eyes met. Halfway through the sandwich, Corinne spoke. "You know, Ruth, the shoreline property is getting a lot of interest these days." She said it casually, like she was commenting on the weather. "Land values are up, way up." Someone mentioned a resort group looking at the whole stretch. My fork paused halfway to my mouth. I set it down carefully. "Is that so?" I asked. Ellis cleared his throat. "It's just talk, Mom. But it could be good timing. You've been carrying this place alone now. We thought you should rest," Corinne finished for him. Her smile never wavered. "You deserve that. Let us help. We can handle the details." I looked at my son. The boy who used to beg Vernon to read him one more chapter. The man who now couldn't quite meet my eyes. I reached under the counter. Slowly, deliberately, pulled out Vernon's notebook. The leather cover caught the lamplight. Soft, worn, familiar. I placed it on the table between us. Not hard, not angry. Just there. Ellis froze. Corinne's smile flickered. Just for a second. I opened the cover to the first page. Vernon's handwriting stared up at them. I didn't read aloud. I didn't have to. I looked straight at Ellis. My voice was quiet, almost tender. "Son, your father knew everything. From 2 years ago." The words landed soft, but they hit like stones dropped in still water. Ellis's face drained of color. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. Corinne recovered faster. She leaned forward slightly. "Ruth, that's not fair. Vernon was sick toward the end. He might have—" I cut her off, not loud, just firm. He wrote it down. Dates, conversations, the forged signature, the calls to the resort people. The night you told him I was forgetful. I turned one page, then another, letting them see. Ellis's hands started to shake. He pressed them flat against the table like he could stop it. "Mom," he whispered. We were just..." "Just what?" I asked. My voice cracked on the last word. I hated that it did, but I let it. Corinne's eyes narrowed. She reached for the notebook. I pulled it back. Gently, but I pulled it back. "No," I said. "This stays with me." The rain picked up outside, harder now, beating against the windows like it wanted in. Ellis looked at me then. Really looked. For the first time in years, his eyes were red-rimmed, scared. "Dad, he never said anything," he murmured. "He just kept it all inside. I nodded once, slow. He did it so I wouldn't have to carry the hurt yet. My throat tightened, but he carried it every day until the day he couldn't anymore. Silence stretched, thick, heavy. Corinne stood up, chair legs scraping. She smoothed her coat. "We should go," she said. Her voice was tight, controlled. Ellis didn't move. I rose too, legs unsteady, but I stood straight. I looked at them both. First my son, then the woman who had promised to love him. And through him, us. "Tonight," I said, "I'm not asking you to leave. I'm not throwing you out into the rain." I paused, let the words settle. "But tomorrow, starting tomorrow, I begin protecting what's left, what Vernon left me to protect." Ellis made a small, broken sound in his throat. Corinne turned toward the door. She didn't look back. Ellis stayed a moment longer. His eyes searched mine, like he was looking for the mother who used to forgive everything. I didn't look away. Finally he stood, slow, like the weight of the room was pressing him down. He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the knob. "Mom," I waited. He swallowed hard. "I'm sorry." The words hung there, small, late. I didn't answer. Not yet. The bell chimed as they left. The door closed softly behind them. I stood alone in the middle of the lantern, rain drumming the roof, the lamps flickering slightly as the wind pushed against the building. I walked to the window, pressed my palm to the cold glass, watched their silhouettes disappear into the wet dark. Then I turned back to the table, to the half-eaten sandwiches, to Vernon's notebook still lying open. I sat down, pulled the book close, and whispered into the empty room. "What now, love?" Outside, the storm answered with another low roll of thunder. But inside, the lantern was still warm, still mine, for one more night. The morning after the rain felt scrubbed clean. The sky was a pale, washed-out blue, the kind that makes everything look sharper, more real. I woke before dawn, made coffee in the small apartment above the lantern, and sat at the kitchen table staring at Vernon's notebook until the light strengthened enough to read by. I didn't open it again. I didn't need to. The words were already carved inside me. By 9 o'clock, I was walking the 3 blocks to Rebecca Klein's office, a narrow storefront between the hardware store and the post office. The sign read simply, "Klein Law, Wills, Trusts, Real Estate." No fancy gold lettering, just clean white paint and a small brass plaque. Rebecca met me at the door herself. 32, maybe 33. Short, dark hair tucked behind her ears, glasses that slipped when she smiled. She didn't smile today. She just held the door open and said, "Come in, Ruth. I've cleared my morning." We sat in her small conference room. Sunlight slanted across the table between us. I placed the notebook in front of her. Then the stack of printouts Clara and I had made the day before. The emails, the draft contracts, the survey company's letterhead peeking out from one folder. Rebecca read in silence, turned pages carefully. Occasionally her pen paused mid-note. When she reached Corinne's forgetful email, her jaw tightened, just once. But I saw it. She closed the last folder, looked at me over the rim of her glasses. "This is serious," she said quietly. "Fraudulent signatures, undue influence, attempts to bypass your ownership rights." She tapped the table once. "We can stop it, but it has to be done right. No emotion, just facts and timing." I nodded. "What do we do?" She leaned forward. "We create an irrevocable trust. Transfer title of the lantern, the building, the inventory, the shoreline parcel into it immediately. You remain the sole trustee during your lifetime. Any changes after that require approval from a committee of 3. You, Clara Voss, and Sheriff Lena Vargas. I blinked. Lena? Rebecca gave a small, knowing smile. Vernon named her years ago as a possible executor in his original will. She's known your family since you moved here. She's honest. And she carries a badge. I thought of Lena. Tall, quiet. The woman who used to bring her daughter into story hour every Saturday. The same woman who had stood beside me at Vernon's funeral, hand on my shoulder, saying nothing because sometimes nothing is the kindest thing. Yes, I whispered. Lena. We spent the next 2 hours drafting. Signatures, notary appointments, language about irrevocable protection of family legacy property. When it was done, Rebecca slid the stack across to me. Sign here and here. Her voice was gentle. This doesn't erase what happened, but it makes sure no one can take it from you without a fight they'll lose. My hand shook only a little when I signed. The pen felt heavier than it should have. I left her office with copies tucked in my bag, the originals already filed for recording. Clara was waiting when I got back to the lantern. She locked the front door behind me, turned the sign to closed. Ruth? Her eyes searched my face. Tell me. I set the folder on the counter, took a breath. It's done. The trust is in place. Nothing moves without us. Clara exhaled like she'd been holding it for days. Then she pulled me into a hug. Brief, fierce, but the quiet war wasn't over. That afternoon, Clara came to me in the back room. She held her phone out, a screenshot. Look what I found in the spam folder on the office computer. It was an email chain. Corinne to a surveyor. Subject: confidential site assessment, Whitaker property. Attached preliminary maps, red lines marking potential development zones. A draft purchase agreement already prepared, spaces blank where signatures would go. One of them labeled Ellis Whitaker, authorized representative. My stomach dropped. They hadn't waited. They'd moved ahead, quietly, confidently. I stared at the screen until the lines blurred. Clara touched my arm. Ruth, what now? I didn't answer right away. I walked to the small desk where Vernon used to write his stories, pulled out a sheet of cream stationery, the kind he'd used for thank you notes to customers. I wrote slowly, one sentence at a time. Ellis, I know about the survey. Your father once said, this land isn't for sale, it's for keeping. For the people who love it. I'm still keeping that promise. Love, Mom. I folded it, sealed it in an envelope, addressed it to Ellis's apartment. No stamp. I'd drop it in his mailbox myself. Clara drove me. We parked a block away. I walked the rest of the way alone, slipped the envelope through the slot, heard it land softly on the mat inside. Then I walked back to the car. Clara didn't ask questions. She just drove us home. That evening the phone rang. Corinne's number. I let it ring twice, then answered. Ruth. Her voice was ice. You think you can lock us out? You're abusing your position. An elderly woman playing games with family property. We'll sue. We'll have you declared incompetent if we have to. I listened, let her words fall like rain on a tin roof. When she stopped for breath, I spoke. Quiet. Calm. Good night, Corinne. I hung up, turned the phone off. Later, when the sun was bleeding orange across the horizon, I walked down to the shore alone. The tide was coming in. Slow. Relentless. I stood at the water's edge, waves licking the toes of my shoes, wind whipping my hair loose from its pins. I closed my eyes, felt the salt on my lips. Vernon, I whispered, the words almost lost in the crash of surf. Am I doing this right? No voice answered, just the sea rolling in, rolling out. I opened my eyes, looked at the stretch of beach Vernon and I used to walk every Sunday after closing. The place where he'd proposed 43 years ago, down on one knee in the wet sand, laughing when the waves soaked his pants. I straightened my shoulders, let the wind push against me. I wasn't alone. Not really. Clara was waiting back at the shop. Rebecca had the papers filed. Lena would stand if it came to that, and somewhere, maybe listening, the man who'd loved this place more than anything was still with me. I turned back toward the lantern. The windows glowed gold against the gathering dusk. One step, then another. The quiet war had begun, and I was ready. The town hall smelled of old wood polish and coffee left too long on the burner. Rows of folding chairs faced a low stage where the Willow Bay Town Council sat behind a long table. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A few locals had come, fishermen in worn caps, shop owners, a couple of retirees who always sat in the back. I arrived late, slipped in through the side door, took the last seat in the rear row. No one noticed me at first. Up front, Corinne stood at the podium. She wore a navy blazer, hair pulled back neatly. Her voice carried clear and confident. "Modernization doesn't mean erasing our history," she said. "It means building on it. A resort here would bring jobs, tax revenue, year-round visitors. The shoreline parcel is underutilized. We're simply proposing a thoughtful redevelopment that honors the community." Ellis stood beside her, hands clasped in front. He didn't speak, just nodded when she glanced his way. His face was pale under the lights. I watched him. My boy. The one who used to chase waves until his sneakers were soaked through. Now he stood there, agreeing to sell the ground where those waves had taught him to run. The council asked questions. One member, old Mr. Hargrove, leaned forward. "What about the current owner? Mrs. Whitaker's bookshop has been there 40 years. Corinne smiled. "Mrs. Whitaker is elderly. She's expressed interest in easing her responsibilities. We're prepared to handle the transition smoothly." A murmur rippled through the room. I felt Clara shift in the seat beside me. Her hand brushed mine. Steady. When the public comment period opened, the clerk called my name. I stood. Legs felt heavy, like walking through deep sand. I walked down the center aisle. Every step echoed. Eyes followed me. Some curious, some kind, some surprised. I reached the podium, gripped the edges, looked out at the faces, then at Ellis. His eyes widened. He took half a step forward, then stopped. I cleared my throat. Once. "I'm not here to argue," I said. My voice was quiet at first. Then it found its strength. "I'm here to tell a story." The room stilled. 43 years ago, Vernon Whitaker bought that shoreline lot with money he earned fixing boats for men who fished these waters before most of us were born. He didn't buy it to flip it. He bought it because he believed stories belonged to places. And that place, the stretch of sand, the little shop we built together, was where he wrote children's books late into the night. Books about lost sailors finding their way home. About lanterns that never go out, no matter how dark the storm. I paused. Let the silence hold. Vernon left me something else. A notebook. His words, dates, conversations. Proof that someone tried to forge my name. Tried to move the land without my knowledge. Tried to call me forgetful so they could decide for me. I lifted the folder Clara had carried for me. Held it up. Not dramatically, just enough for them to see. Emails, draft contracts, a survey done in secret, and a statement from Clara Voss, who's worked beside me for 22 years, that Corinne once said I was no longer competent to manage my own affairs. Clara stood. She didn't need the microphone. Her voice carried anyway. "I heard it myself, in this very town." She said it like it was fact. Sheriff Lena Vargas rose from her seat near the front. Tall, uniform crisp. She spoke without raising her voice. "I've received a formal report from Rebecca Klein. Allegations of fraud, undue influence, attempts to circumvent ownership rights, The matter is under review." The council chamber went very still. Corinne's face had gone white. She opened her mouth, closed it. Ellis looked at the floor. His shoulders curved inward. The council chair cleared his throat. "Thank you, Mrs. Whitaker. We'll take this into consideration." They voted, hand by hand, one after another. No, no, no. The project was denied. People began to stand. Murmurs rose. Someone clapped, softly at first, then more. I didn't stay for the applause. I turned, walked back up the aisle, past the rows of chairs, out the side door into the cool evening air. Ellis was waiting outside, leaning against the brick wall, hands in his pockets. When he saw me, he pushed off, took 2 steps, then dropped to one knee on the wet pavement. "Mom," his voice broke. "I lost Dad, and I almost lost you. Because of greed, because I was too weak to say no." Tears tracked down his face. He didn't wipe them. I looked down at him. My son, broken open. Finally, I reached out, placed my hand under his chin, lifted his face so he could see mine. I knelt too, so we were level, eye to eye. "I haven't forgiven everything," I said. My voice trembled. "But I will give you a chance to prove you can change." He nodded. Once. Hard. I pulled him up, into my arms. He buried his face against my shoulder, the way he had when he was small and the world felt too big. I held him there, on the steps of the town hall, while people filed past us, some touching my arm, some whispering thank you. Corinne walked by last. She didn't stop, didn't speak, just kept walking toward the parking lot, her heels clicking sharp against the asphalt. She got into her car, drove away. No goodbye, no backward glance. The next morning I opened the lantern early. The bell chimed soft as I turned the key. Sunlight poured across the shelves. Dust motes danced in the beams. I took down the old sign, hung the new one Clara had painted the night before, the lantern, where stories never go out. I stepped back, looked up at it, smiled. The first real smile in months. Clara arrived with coffee. Behind her, 3 children from the neighborhood ran in. One clutched a library card, another asked for the Dragon book. I knelt, met their eyes. "Pick whatever you want," I said. "First one's on the house." They scattered laughing toward the shelves. Clara touched my arm. "Ruth, you did it." I shook my head. "No, we did it." Outside, the sea rolled on, steady, endless. Inside, the lantern burned bright, not because the storm had passed, but because we had chosen, quietly, stubbornly, to keep it lit. Justice isn't revenge. It's holding the light steady for the ones who loved us, so it shines long after the wind tries to blow it out. And sometimes, just sometimes, that light finds its way back to the people who need it most. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for listening and for allowing this story to speak to your heart. The Wild West still holds countless truths, some painful, some tender, all worth remembering. Stay with us, subscribe, comment, and invite others to discover these untamed stories. From our hearts to yours, thank you for being part of this journey. Aviso legal. Disclaimer. Each story shared here is produced for storytelling enjoyment. Certain scenes may include fictional or dramatized elements inspired by historical circumstances. Although AI tools assist us in visuals, narration, and script development, the emotional tone, editing, and quality control are conducted by people to ensure meaningful experiences. We fully uphold YouTube's policies, using no deceptive recreations or impersonations of real individuals. All creative resources are properly licensed. Unauthorized copying, re-uploading, or remixing is not permitted. Thank you for supporting the effort behind every episode we create.